So in a previous video, I demonstrated how Google's Notebook LM can create amazingly compelling and engaging podcasts. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to take a portion of scripture, in this case, Job chapter 41, and the entire chapter here, and this is where it describes and talks about Leviathan. And I'm curious as to how the podcast will come out based off of providing only scripture as the source material. So we're going to come over to notebooklm.google.com and we're going to select to create a new notebook. And then we have the option to add sources. So I have 3 text files that I put together. One is Isaiah 27, Job 41, and Psalm 104. And you can see that it immediately starts to create a summary for me. I can select to do FAQs, a study guide, table of contents, etc. What I want to do, however, is just go ahead and say generate a deep dive conversation. This process does take a couple minutes to complete. Once it's complete, we'll take a listen to what it generated. So after a couple minutes, it is complete, and we can see that it has generated a 12-minute and 36-second podcast. So let's go ahead and take a listen to some of what it created here.
All right, strap in, everyone, because today we're diving deep, and I mean deep, into some seriously ancient waters.
Sounds intriguing. What mysteries are we uncovering today?
Well, we're tackling a creature that sparked debate and captured imaginations for centuries, Leviathan.
Leviathan. The name itself conjures up such vivid imagery.
It really does, and that's what we're going to explore today. We're plumbing the depths of Isaiah, Job, and Psalms to see how each one portrays this enigmatic being.
And I'm guessing those portrayals are pretty different, given the range of those texts.
You guessed it. That's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. So what can we learn about Leviathan from these texts, and how has its portrayal shifted over time?
Let's find out.
We'll start things off in the book of Job, chapter 41, talk about an entrance. We get this incredibly vivid picture of Leviathan, and let me tell you, this isn't some cute little fish.
Oh, I bet. What's the vibe? More like Jaws or Finding Nemo?
Think Jaws on steroids. This is the ultimate predator. Impenetrable hide, fiery breath. The text really goes all out.
Wow, they don't hold back. So this Leviathan is a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. One detail that really struck me was this whole idea of capturing it. Forget about it. No fishhook, no rope, no way. It's like, what are you going to do, wrangle a hurricane?
Yeah, good luck with that. It sounds like trying to control the uncontrollable. And that actually makes me think about how people in the ancient world must have viewed these natural forces they couldn't control.
Right. Storms, earthquakes, massive sea creatures. Without today's scientific understanding, these were terrifying, awe-inspiring events.
And Leviathan becomes this sort of embodiment of that awe.
Totally, like that feeling you get standing on the deck of a ship, storm raging, and this creature emerges from the waves. No wonder they were terrified.
Exactly. And it's not just the Bible either. Think about Greek myths. Typhon, the Kraken, these colossal, almost godlike beings appear across cultures.
Right, tapping into that primal fear of the unknown that we all share. But here's where things get interesting. We move from Job to Isaiah chapter 27, and suddenly the tables have turned. Leviathan's defeated. And not just defeated, vanquished. Completely destroyed.
Wow, talk about a plot twist. So we go from cowering in fear to witnessing this creature's downfall. It definitely shifts the tone.
Right. It's a complete 180. So are we supposed to be afraid in Job, but then reassured by God's power in Isaiah? What's the takeaway?
Well, it's complex, and there are a few different interpretations. Some scholars believe this shift emphasizes God's absolute power, even over the most chaotic forces.
Makes sense. It's like saying, even this terrifying creature is ultimately under control.
Precisely. But remember, we also need to consider the historical and political context. Some argue that Leviathan could symbolize an enemy nation or a powerful king, with God's victory representing a real-world triumph.
Another layer to the story. So it's like we're deciphering a code with multiple solutions. But wait, there's more. Just when you think you've got Leviathan figured out, we encounter a completely different side in Psalm 104.
Oh, now I'm really intrigued. What's this new side?
Suddenly, Leviathan's playful, like frolicking in the sea, part of God's creation. It's a stark contrast to those other portrayals. How do we even reconcile these images?
Well, it's all about understanding the psalmist's perspective. Their focus is on God's care for all of creation, from the tiniest organism to the mightiest creature. And in this context, Leviathan's playfulness might reflect this acceptance of the natural world in all its diversity, even its most, let's say, intimidating aspects. It's like saying even the seemingly scary stuff has a place in this grand scheme.
It's amazing, though, isn't it? We've got Leviathan as this ultimate force of nature, a vanquished enemy, and now a playful creature of God. It's almost like we're dealing with three completely different Leviathans.
It really is remarkable, the range of portrayals.
So was this always meant to be the same entity, or did the symbol of Leviathan kind of evolve over time, maybe to reflect different theological and cultural ideas?
That's the million-dollar question. And the beauty of these texts, honestly, is that there isn't one right answer. They invite us to grapple with these big questions about humanity's place in this powerful and very unpredictable world.
It's true. And it makes you think about the nature of good and evil, too, and how we understand the divine when we're faced with such awe-inspiring beauty and terrifying power all at the same time.
Absolutely. It's not about arriving at some fixed definition. It's about embracing the mystery, the ambiguity, and really the way these stories still resonate with us, even across millennia.
And speaking of resonating, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to picture my own version of Leviathan after hearing all these descriptions.
I think that's inevitable. It's the power of a good symbol, isn't it? It taps into something deep within us, something that goes beyond the literal meaning of the words.
It really does. And it's not just about the past either. These ancient symbols can help us make sense of our own world today, our anxieties, our encounters with the unknown.
100%.
That's what I find so fascinating about diving into these ancient texts. They really make us think about our place in the world. And for me, that brings up a question. If you were writing about Leviathan today, what would it look like? What would a modern-day Leviathan represent?
Ooh, that's a great question. I like where you're going with this. What would it be?
Right. Would it be climate change, maybe? That sense of a planet almost rebelling against us? Or maybe even something more abstract, like the overwhelming flood of information we deal with every single day.
You're hitting on something important there. I think Leviathan isn't just about a big, scary sea monster. It's more about the embodiment of those things that make us feel small, insignificant, maybe even a little afraid. And in a world grappling with pandemics, political division, this constant technological disruption.
Right. It makes sense.
There's no shortage of forces out there that can make us feel exactly that way.
It makes you think. If you were to open up your newsfeed and see Leviathan trends on Twitter, what would you imagine?
I don't know. It's a bit unnerving to think about.
A volcanic eruption, a global cyber attack. There's just something about that uncertainty, about not knowing what's lurking just beneath the surface.
And that's something I think the ancients understood all too well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
They didn't have the luxury of weather apps or 247 news cycles. They had to face the unknown head on.
With a mix of fear and reverence, I imagine.
Exactly.
It's like they were constantly reminded that there were these forces larger than themselves, forces they couldn't control, forces they couldn't fully comprehend. And maybe there's something valuable for us in rediscovering that sense of awe and humility today.
Especially in a world where we often feel like we have all the answers right there on our phones.
At our fingertips, like we've figured it all out.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But even with all our technology, all our knowledge, there are still mysteries out there that humble us, that remind us that we're not the ultimate masters of the universe.
Things that make us stop and say, wow, there are forces at play here that I can't even begin to grasp.
And I think that's where the real conversation begins, isn't it? When we acknowledge the limits of our own understanding, when we open ourselves up to the possibility that there are things out there, whether it's the vastness of space, the complexities of the human heart, things that will always be beyond our full comprehension.
So maybe that's what Leviathan ultimately represents.
What's that?
A reminder to approach the world with a sense of wonder, a little humility, and maybe even a healthy dose of fear.
A healthy dose of fear. I kind of like that. Not the kind that paralyzes us, of course.
Of course not.
But the kind that keeps us grounded.
Yeah.
It reminds us to be mindful, to maybe proceed with a little caution.
To not take our place in this grand scheme of things for granted.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those forces that are bigger than ourselves. And that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. It can be a source of awe, of wonder, and even, as we saw, a source of joy.
It's true. Those ancient stories, passed down for generations, they still have this incredible power to make us think about our place in the world, about the forces we can and can't control.
It really is a testament to the enduring power of these stories and to those who kept them alive all this time.
Absolutely. So, as we resurface from our deep dive into Leviathan, I think I'm left with this thought. It's not just about a monster in the deep. It's almost like Leviathan's a mirror.
A mirror. Interesting.
It reflects our fears, our fascination with the unknown, and maybe even our own potential for both destruction and creation. It's a reminder that the world is a complex and mysterious place. And sometimes the best we can do is approach it with a sense of wonder and a healthy dose of humility, a willingness to keep asking questions, even if we never actually find all the answers.
And who knows, maybe in those unanswered questions, that's where we find our own Leviathans, those things that challenge us and inspire us all at once.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Leviathan. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep questioning, and when you encounter something overwhelming, something awe-inspiring in your world, ask yourself, what would Leviathan do?